This video contains mentions of child abuse and injury by fire. Stay safe. Behold, the final installment of my Victorian character design series. Everyone, meet Prudence. She is my mind baby. You know, one of those OCs you keep in your head but never draw, so that when you do end up drawing them, they come out fully formed like Venus born from sea foam. Anyways, here's a general rundown of her character. She is a sympathetic, heroic antagonist to the criminal protagonist over here, characters I designed in my previous videos in the same series. She comes from a long line of witches with an affinity for fire magic, and she's been tasked to bring these two to justice. Anyways, for Prudence's design, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted. First, black curly hair and light brown skin. I just pictured her as being half Indian, half white. I just kind of feel like her being mixed race and Asian just made me relate to her more. I don't know, I can't explain decisions like this. Never mind. Why not? Literally just why not? Anyways, second, I pictured her as wearing mostly white as some sort of sorcerer's uniform. I drew in the concept art her with blackened hands from her magic, her fire magic, and she would have magic suit on her hands. And third, very important, she wears a Victorian biking suit. Puffy pants for the win! I love puffy pants. And of course, we gonna put on the witch hat. And of course, a torch wand. Why don't we talk about her weirdly developed backstory? Prudence is very young, 16 to 17, and she's part of the Sorcerers Guild. Sorcerers in this world aren't witches or wizards. They're magical, of course, but they're the magical authorities who deal with magical misuse and things like that. Her mother is head sorceress, divorced from her father. Prudence has spent most of her life in boarding school. She's diligent and studious, and she's very talented and skilled in magic, although that's expected from her and her bloodline. She doesn't have many friends either. After she graduates from boarding school, Mother pressures her to join the Sorcerers Guild. She manages to pass a practical test to prove how strong she is, but she also needs to prove to the other sorcerers that she's mature enough for the job, and to prove herself to her mother that she's a successful member of the family. So, she takes on a task: hunt down 2 runaway mages who are attempting to flee the country. Since they're not very powerful and don't have many resources, this should be fine, right? So she spends the story chasing around the Green Witch and the Star Wizard all around the country. But as time goes on, and things get more stressful as the chase gets longer and longer, her magic starts to grow too strong. While I was doing her design, because I already established in previous videos that gems are conductors of magic, I tried to design some hand jewelry so that she would have gems on her hands to use to set her hands on fire. But I realized that having her be so powerful she doesn't need gems in the first place would be very interesting, and would also make her that much more dangerous and frightening to others. Additionally, in the initial concept art, she's using a torch instead of a rapier, because a torch has 1, fire in it of course, and 2, also represents how she's carrying the family legacy, you know, because it symbolizes something akin to the Olympic fire. But I ditched it because I thought Prudence holding a rapier in the final design would be so cool, and I still think it was, but I also kinda regret not going with the torch idea. So let's pretend that I did include a drawing of her having it hung around her waist in torch form, because I have established in previous videos that wands can and will change shape. So it has a torch form and it has a stabby form. Yeah, that makes way more sense, especially since I didn't actually draw her with a sheath of any sort. I didn't have the time or energy to go and fit in the rapier and torch design in there, but let's assume that there's a gem at the bottom of the hilt and in the cup itself to help conduct magic. Cheers, mates. I think that one reason why Prudence as a character fascinated me so much more than the other characters in this series is because she deconstructs one of my favorite ideas. The chosen one, you know, the youthful protagonist with the power to change the world from a certain bloodline that's just better than the others naturally. I've been always fascinated by how young protagonists are. It's supposed to make them relatable to younger audiences, of course, but thinking about a more realistic take on them would be interesting, don't you think? I mean, being super young and also super powerful would be disastrous. Just think about all the horrible directions that could go. I like the idea of Prudence's mother also having to go through the same thing that Prudence is going through right now, like having to deal with criminals and bringing people to justice at like 16 or 17, and then she's just like, well, I did that at your age and I turned out great, so why not? So like Prudence's mother would basically think that it was going through such struggles that made her powerful and successful. So it's a family tradition to put your young adolescent children through things like this. And Prudence doesn't want to be another failure, so she's certainly not going to give up. As a general side note, imagine having a bunch of superpowered teenagers running around. Horrifying. I love it. I actually have a completely other universe that explores this concept further, but with magical girls instead. One concept that I thought was very interesting was one that I picked up from a Ruby Theory video that theorized that the characters' unique powers were shaped by their various traumas. And I thought further about what it would be like to be Prudence, pushed to excel from a very young age. I do think that pushing your child to achieve a lot of things and be the best of the best can actually help them fulfill those goals, or, well, more accurately, your goals. But I also think that it's very unhealthy and very unfair to put that much pressure on a child from a young age, even if they're teenagers. And I think that it would put a lot of psychological and sometimes physical toll on them. So I wanted to explore that further with Prudence. Prudence doesn't have strong magic because her family has superpowered genes. Prudence has strong magic because her family has had the same generational trauma for many, many years. All of their parents are always expecting their children to carry on the family legacy, to bring people to justice even though they're just children themselves. And Prudence doesn't really understand how wrong it is until she one day has to ask her estranged aunt for help because she's lost the lead on the protagonist. Her mother disapproves of this aunt, but she goes in secret, and there she meets 3 cousins that she hasn't seen before. Her cousins look a lot like her aunt and a lot like her mother, with red hair. But to her shock, Prudence discovers that her cousins have little to no magical talent whatsoever. And she's even more shocked when she realizes that her aunt doesn't care, that her aunt is okay with it. Her aunt tells her that her daughters can sing and dance and play piano, so what's wrong with that? What's wrong with not having magic? And Prudence just can't wrap her mind around it until a long time later. She realizes that the reason her cousins don't have that magical talent her family expects is because they never felt they needed it. That their mother thought that them just being them in that moment was enough. And that's the reason why they were different. Not that they were stupid and she wasn't. So if you watched the previous Victorian design series videos, you'll know I usually do props and portraits, specifically an oil painting portrait of the character accompanied by a very detailed prop of their wand. But this time I decided to experiment. So on this side we have Prudence being cool and mysterious, showing off her power and her cool rapier, and having a fire. Woo, nice. But then on the other side we have something very abstract and symbolic, because I just like to pretend I'm deep sometimes, Wink wink. I also just love designing families, it's just so fun. So here we have Mother, Prudence, and her sister. Which, by the way, did I tell you Prudence has a sister? I named the sister Constance. So what I imagine is that Constance and Prudence basically have the same story. But Constance is older, so everything just happens earlier. So Constance also went on a journey to go and capture some criminals, but she failed miserably in all the wrong ways, and then she got disowned. So Prudence is here trying to make sure that she doesn't fail miserably and then get disowned. And then we have her mother looming over her, with her hair being fiery and red and her eyes being blue to represent the blue of a candle flame. And then we have her sister reflecting Prudence, with her hair being more smoky and ashy and her face being half obscured. I just like doing stuff like this once in a while. I think it's fun. I think it's good to experiment once in a while too. So her mother wears pure white as a subtle difference to show off her perfection in comparison to Prudence having a more cream colored uniform. And then Constance just wears a dark orange red thing. And that's just to show off that she's just a regular person now, wherever she is. I feel as if Constance and Prudence just don't talk anymore because Prudence just has no idea where Constance is. So months and months after chasing the protagonist all around the country, she corners them. And she thinks that everything's going to be fine, right? That she's got them, and she has enough power to corner them. She surrounds them with fire and they have no choice but to stay put. But it's just too much. She ends up losing control and, well, things just go badly from there. She causes a lot of damage. Everyone gets hurt, her included. And when she ends up getting out of the hospital, she's kicked from being a sorcerer. She's too scared to face her mother. But instead of her mother picking her up from the hospital, it's a sister. Her happy ending? It's just her having a honey business with Constance in the middle of nowhere with no contact with her family. Yeah, when I said weirdly developed backstory, I also meant weirdly developed story in general. I just feel very fixated on this character. I don't know why. Please send help. Anyways, that's all for the video. I think that overall her design is basically what I pictured in my head, but less blurry, so I am very satisfied. And biased, of course. I'm not sure what sort of last name she should have, so please leave suggestions in the comments if you have any. And maybe names for her mother too. Thanks for watching! Have a good day or night. Bye!